Hello once again, it's Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher, and this is part 3 of the little woodworking vise build. Be sure and watch parts 1 and 2, and this is how far I have progressed. And it's looking pretty good, and the next order of operations here is to make the handle. So let's get started on that. At this point in time, I have determined that this will be a 4-part video, so be sure and watch all of the parts. I'm going to depart a little bit from the drawing, but it calls for a 6-inch piece of 3/8 rod, and they turned it down at the end. Well, that's kind of a big step, and you couldn't do that in a beginning class. And then the caps here, and there's 2 of them, of course, are 5/8 diameter, and they need to be pressed on, but actually they're going to show you how to peen them on. I don't want to do that. That would be a tough job. I'm going to press them on, that is, shrink fit them. That also would not be a very suitable solution in a school shop. We made thousands of projects in the school shop, and often they used a handle like this. Matter of fact, there's 2 of them on this project. And that was a good solution. All that is in this case, 5/16 rod threaded on each end, and then a nut put on there and ground down. Well, they did have trouble with that. They'd spin it off if they didn't do it on the left-hand wheel. But that's probably the easiest way to do it. And here's the sample that I did. The only thing is there might be hammer marks on it, or certainly it's going to turn color and scale a little bit, but that can be polished up. But that's the 3/8 stock. And you know, I spent, I don't know, and you have to get this red hot in order to shrink fit it. But I spent over a half hour looking through this Morphodite selection of oddball reamers, and I finally did come up with one that is actually 2/1000ths under. I also found one that was 1/1000th under, and it must have been reaming oversized, but this one is actually 3/72 and 8. So call it 3/73 for all intents and purposes. I decided to use the handle that I had made up as a sample. I polished it up a little bit. It's again 3/8 stock, 6 inches long, and I'll make the other end for it now. I've already center drilled. This is a 23/64, and then I will ream it with that undersized 3/8 reamer. I will be using my acetylene plumber's torch to heat this up red hot, which will expand it, and then it should partially drop on, and then maybe I'll have to tap it so it's about flush. And I did chamfer these and face the end. I won't have the opportunity to face this end, but remember, I would paint myself into a corner with just pressing that on, so I do have to put it through that part, and then it's ready to put on. All right, let's heat that up. I just had a nice lunch, so I'm back with tons of energy. It was a Nathan's hot dog. I hope there was no possum meat in there. Well, let's drill some holes. I'll start by drilling these two holes on the front jaw, and the purpose of those and their countersunk is to fasten the wooden jaws. So you can see from the drawing here that the holes are 1.5 inches from the top and 1 3/8 in on each side of the center line. And it says drill them 7/32 for, oh, I think they call for a number 9 wood screw. Why didn't they say 10? Okay, the height gauge is set at 1.5 inches, and I know I'm not working on a surface plate. This is just the workbench, but it's accurate enough for these holes. So 1.5 inches. Looking at the assembly drawing here now, these are the two holes that I just drilled to hold the wood jaw plates on. Those are the two holes and countersunk. Now notice that there are 4 holes in the other jaw, 2 of them to hold the wood onto the actual casting, and this screw and that hole is used to fasten the vise to the bench, as are these 2. So I'm going to lay out all, let's see, 6 holes here. 1, 2, 3 times 2, and I'll do that off camera onto this piece and then drill those holes. On this drawing you can see the location and the dimensions of where these holes should be drilled, those 4 and then 2 right here. Okay, all of the holes are drilled and countersunk and tapped, and let's review the purpose of them now. The 2 threaded ones with flathead 1/4 20 screws will be used to hold the wooden jaw plate on this back jaw. These 2 countersunk screws will be used to, with flathead screws, screw the vise onto the bench. Let this represent the bench, and then the 2 on the bottom here, and I'll probably drill those out later, for lag screws, and they also are used to fasten the vise to the bench. You know, I'd like to get this mounted on a little bench for Henry, so that's why I have not drilled all of the holes to final size, because that depends on the bench and the thickness of the bench. You see, I'd probably use lag screws to come in from the bottom. That's how they're mounted in school shops anyway. Let's take a brief break from machining here. Now this is the finished front jaw, but I've taken the other jaw that is still a rough casting pretty much, and I put bluing on the back side, and I'm going to run this across the bell sander just to show you the high spots and the low spots, because I was talking about shrinkage earlier, and I do understand that this platen is no longer true. It's worn out. This is 40 years old. So, obviously, the blue is the low spots, the shiny part is the high spot. And laying a parallel on there, which is ground, and I would say is pretty true, not perfect, I know that. This is a 1.5 thousandth. I have no 1,000, so there's the 1.5. Let me get in from this side. And as I move it up, it's dragging now. So those spots are less than 1/1000. I'm really surprised that there isn't more shrinkage in here. I suspect that there would be on this one because we got some extra thick spots. But considering that this wasn't really properly not gated but risered, that there, you know, is bound to be some sinkholes. All right, enough on that. I will now drill a 5/32 hole to pin this shaft in place. It'll be flush here. I've already center drilled it to spot it. And I'm going to drill all the way through. Never drive a pin into a blind hole or you will live to regret it. Also, the flute on here is not long enough to reach all the way through, so I will keep backing it out to clear the chips, otherwise you could very well break your drill bit. Okay, 2 points now, and they're extra credit. You don't have to watch, but I like to put index witness marks on there because it may not work if you revolve the shaft 180 degrees. It may not line up perfectly. That's a drill bit that's in there temporarily. I'm not in the mood for driving that big long pin in there just yet because I have to remove this for one more operation. And then a final point here. Let me take this out. I took a number 19 drill bit and relieved it just a little bit from each side, perhaps that much. Why would I do that? Because that's an awful lot of driving. So in other words, this roll pin will go in free, you know, that far on each side, so you don't have to hammer and beat on that for such a long roll pin. Or you could use a lot shorter roll pin. This is 5/32. This is a short preview of part 4, so join me for that when I mill out this little pocket up here for the dog. See you then. That's quite enough machine shop pleasure for the day. Be sure and join me in the following part. Remember, this is a 4-part video where I finish this off, where I machine this little pocket in here for the dog. I make the wooden plates. I do the final assembly and a few other miscellaneous chores to complete this project. I hope you are enjoying this video series. This is tubalcain signing out, saying so long for now, and I'll see you next time.